We already finished the server side, so now we focus on the client side. So inside this root folder, we are going to create a folder called client, and then we go to the client folder, and then we want to make this as a React app. So now we type npx create React app, and then press dot. After we already finished the React app, we are going to delete those unnecessary files. For example, we do not need this app.css. We just delete all of this, because later we will also use this file, but we will create our own CSS. But we do not need this index.css, and also this SVG, and also these two JS files. So we right click and delete this, and then we go inside the app and delete all of the content, and we just type app, and we do not need this logo, and we back to index.cs.js, and we also need to remove this because these files do not exist now, and we cannot call these functions. Now if we try to type yarn start, now if we type localhost 3001, and you can see the app, which is this that we just entered. And now we want to go to use the bootstrap, so we need to go to the index.html, and right inside the documentation we can copy this CSS. So on top of the index.html, which inside the public folder, we type and paste here. Now you can see the font has a little bit difference, and we want to use the form, so we copy this form and back to our app.js, and then we paste inside this div, and then we have to change this to JSX, and then we also need to change this to container. Now if we back to the React app, now you can see the forms already pasted to our website, but now we want to change this that we can use for our own project. So first, we do not need the email address, and also we do not need this small text. So back to here, we delete all of the small text, and then we delete all of these HTML4, and we do not have the form check, and we also need to change this as title, and also this is the detail, and all of these type is text, so we change this to text, and we do not have the ID, and this is not useful now, and we also do not need these properties, and we can change this to enter title, and then this is enter detail, and we also want to have one more input field, but this time which is a date, and we do not have the placeholder, and we change this to date, and then we save it. Now we can see it already has the title detail and also the date, which allow us to check the date, to input the date. This part we want to add the custom CSS to our project, so we go to our app.css, and then we go to here and type body, because we want to add a gray background colors to our project. So we use background, and then we type background colors, and then we type gray. Now you can see we have a background color of gray, and now we also want to add the colors to our input box, and which is the container at here. So we add a class for to do box. So we back to the app.css, and then we select this by using .to do box, and then we have a background colors of FA, and then we save it. We can see the box already appeared, and we want to add the shadow, so it is pop up from the background, and we use the box shadow generators, and then we copy this, and then we paste here, and we do not need this selector, so we just delete this demo. And actually you can adjust your own shadow by using this scroll bar. And now we back to our project. We can see the shadows already appeared in the box. And then we also want to add some paddings. And we also think that the box is too close to the top, so we add the margin top. Now this part we are going to add the list group to the React app. So we go to the list group and then we copy this. And then we back to our app.js, and under the form we add this bunch of code, and then we copy all of this, and then we right click and convert this to JSX and click save. Now we can see there is a list group inside our app, but you can also see they stick to each other, so we have to add the style, and also we want to change this to what we want. In this part we continue to install the Apollo client. So we back to the documentations and we copy this command and we stop the client, and then we paste this command to install the Apollo client and also the GraphQL, and then we copy this to initialize the Apollo client. We back to the index.js and then we import all of these, and then we create the client. So we paste this, but the URL, the URI is the localhost 5000. GraphQL. And then we change this to Apollo provider, and then the client is equal to client, and then we remove these two. Now we are going to create a query and also the mutations. So first we go to the source folders, and under this folder we create a folder called GraphQL. And then inside this we create two files. One is the mutation.js and the other is the query.js. And now we are going to copy this, and we copy the import and then paste here. We do not need the use query at this file. And then we copy this. We will do a very similar things. We copy these examples and paste to here. Instead of get the docs, we change the name to get to dos, and we can delete this part and change this to get to dos. And then we want to return the ID, the title, the detail, and also the date. Now after we create this query.js, we can go to the app.js, and then we are going to import this get to dos on the top. So we import the get to dos from GraphQL and then query, and then we also import the use query from the Apollo client. So we copy this and paste here, and we delete this GraphQL, and then inside the app we create constant loading error data, and then equal to use query, and then get to dos. So we console.log the data to see what happened inside the app. So now if we save this and then back to our app, and we forget to export this query, so we need to export and save it. And there is another error that we should not import from the mutation, this should import from the query. So we save it And now you can see the errors gone. Now if we refresh the page, we can see the data is inside this object, and we have the to-dos inside this get to-dos that has the date, details, ID, and also the title. Now we already get the to-dos data, so we are going to display it and render into the collection group. And first we are going to search these class and also the field rule and change this to a capitalized letters to remove this warning. So we back to here and search field rule, and now we go to remove this, or we select all of these, and then we convert this to JSX, and then we save it. Now if we refresh, we can see the warning has gone, and now we can focus on loading the data. So we back to our project and go to the app.js, and we can see the list group at here, and the first one we just want to loop the first one, and the other we can remove this because we will render from the data. So if we delete this and save it, now we can see we just has one to-do items. Now we back to here, and then we go to the app, and then we are going to check if loading, then it will return loading. If error, and then this will return p error.message. And then if there is not loadings and there is no error, it will return the following. And now we go to the list item, and then at here we use data.getTodos, because you can see this is get to-dos, and we continue to use .map and to-do, and for each to-do we are going to render the following. So we copy this and then we paste inside the, so we cut this and paste inside here. So we save it. Now we also change this to to-do.title, and now we can see it got the second to-do, and this is render from the MongoDB. And we also need to change this to to-do.detail. Now you can see the details, and the last one is to-do.date. And now we can also see the date, and as you can see, this is not very good for display the time, so we need the help of moment. So we stop the React app, and then we type npm install moment. So after we already install the moment, we're going to start the React app by npm start, and then we go back to the time, and then we type moment, and then we wrap this the to-do.date, and then we use .format, and then we use mmmmm, and then ddyy, and it said the moment is not divided because we has to import the moment from moment. And if we add two more y here, you can see this is the year, and we can display the month date correctly. So this is how to render the data from the MongoDB. In this part, we are going to extract the input form and also the list item to components. So we go to the source folder and create a new folder called components. And then under this folder, we create two files. One is app to-dos, and the others is to-do. And then we type RAFCE, and then we back to the app.js, and we are going to search the form. and then we copy this and paste to the add todos.js. Now we back to the app.js, and at here we paste add todos and save it. Now if we refresh the page, we can see there is nothing errors. There's no errors, but there is a error that is about the unique key, and this is related to the items, and we will fix this later. And now we are going to copy this. We cut this out, and then we go to the todo.js and type RAFCE, and then we paste this at here. And now we do not have the moment, so we have to import the moment from moment. And also we do not have the date, and we will pass this from the props. So we go to here and pass the title, date, and also the detail. And now we do not have this. We change this to title, the date, and also the detail. And now we go to the app.js and we go to get the to-do items. Now we have the title is equal to todo.title, and then we duplicate 2 times, and then we change this to detail and also the date. And now since we do not use this package at this file, we can remove this and save it. And we also have to add the key is equal to the todo.id and save it. Now if we refresh the page, we can see the website work properly and there are no errors here. Now we are focusing on creating the mutations. So like this one, we are going to copy this and paste into the mutations. And then we also like export constant and then add to do, and then we use GraphQL and we are doing the mutations, and then we use add to do, and then we will pass the title with the type of string, and the detail with the type of string, and also the date with the type of date. And since if you look back to the server, and you should remember that we create the add to do, so we use this name and back to the mutations, and we also need to use add to do, and then we copy these and paste to here, and we just name it as title, and we remove this, and this is detail and also the date, and then we want to return the ID, the title, the detail, and also the date. So after we create this, we can back to the add to do.js, and we need to create a state, so we use date, and then we set to do, and then we initialize the state to be the empty title, the empty detail, and also the empty date. And then we also get the add to do functions by using constant add to do, and we have to import the use date, and we also need to use mutation, and then we use add to do, and it will automatically import the add to do and also the use mutations. And then we go to create the on submit functions, so we use constant on submit equal to the event, and we use events.prevent default, and then we use add to do, and then we have variables, and then the title is to do.title, and then we duplicate this and we change this to detail and also the date. And now we bind this to the form, and this is on submit, which is equal to on submit. And we forgot that after we add to do, we should refresh the order to do list. So after this, we use refresh queries, and then here we execute the query, and this is get all the to dos. Now we also imported this on the top. And then in each of the input field, we add the value is equal to todo.title, and then we have the onChange handler is equal to the event, and we will pass this to setTodo. So we copy this and paste to each of the input field, and of course we change this to the detail, and here we need to change this to date, and the values we have to format so it meets the UI requirement. So todo.date and then .format and then YYYY So we save it, and then we try to display the JSON.stringify and then todo. Now we can look at this. Initially, it has the empty title, empty detail, and also the date. And if we select the date and select the type some details, and then this should be another to do, and then we try to submit, and we find that inside the mutation.js we have some errors, and this is not data, this is date. So we save it. And now if we go to try to submit again, now you can see the another to-do already pop up immediately at here. So which means we already successfully add the new to-do to our database. In the previous part, we already had the functions to create a new to-do, and this time we want to add the function to delete the specific to-do. So first we go to the mutation.js, and now we create another functions. We type export constant delete to do, and this is equal to GraphQL, and then at here we name it as delete to do, and we will pass the ID and the type is ID, and then we execute the delete to do. And again, since in the server side we already named it as delete to do, so we have to use the delete to do here. And then we back to the todo.js, and since we want to get the delete to do functions, so we have to go to here and use the use mutations. So we create constant delete to do, and this is equal to use mutation and then delete to do, and then we create another functions called remove to do, and this will bind to our delete button. So constant remove to do, and we will pass the ID inside these functions, and inside this we will use the delete to do functions, and we will pass some variables, and this is the ID. And after we delete the to do, we have to refetch the queries, and the query is get to do's. And now we find that we do not have the ID inside the props, so we have to go to the app.js, and at here we have to use the ID, pass the ID is equal to todo.id, and then we back to the to do and go to the rubbish bin. The rubbish bin is at here, so we use on click is equal to remove to do, and then we pass the ID, and it said the ID hasn't defined because we haven't destructured at here. So after we save it, the error is gone. Now for example, if we try to delete this another to do, and it said the server has disconnected, so we try to refresh the page, and then we try to delete this. Now you can see the to-dos, the specific to-do already deleted, and it will refresh the page. And we can also delete this just for debugging. So we go to the form and we try to find the JSON, and we delete this one and save it. Now we should see the debug tags already. In this part, we are going to start adding the feature that to detect whether it is edit mode or not edit mode, and this depends on whether need to cancel the edit mode if the user click on this item, it will set to the edit mode, and then the user can type anything. But if the user clicked the area other than the input area, it will cancel the edit mode. So the user can create a new to-do if this is not an edit mode. You may not understand right now, but if you continue, you will understand. So now we first back to the add to-do, and now we have to use the useRef to define which areas we want to detect. So we create a input area ref, and we do not define anything. And then we need to import the useRef from React. And now we go to the form and we set the ref is equal to input area ref. And then we go back to the top and we use the use effect. And then we check, and then we create the functions. So constant check if clicked outside is equal to the event, and we are going to check if the input area ref do not contain the target, which means this is not the input area. Then we will just console log this is outside input area, and then else we console log this is inside input area. And we have to add the event listener for the document. So we add the event listener for the mouse down, and we check if click outside, and then we have to return to clean up the event listener. So we use document dot remove event listener, and then mouse down, and then check if clicked outside. So the use effect haven't defined yet, so we also need to import from the React. So you can see it already import. And now we can go back to the website and see whether it is implemented. So if now we clicked on the input area, you can see it set input inside the input area. And if we click outside the input area, it will display outside input area inside the console. In this part, we are going to use the context to store the selected ID that we will use later. So first we go to the source folders, and then we create a new file called todo context.js, and then we import the create context from React, and then we export the todo context is equal to create context, and which is equal to null. And then we go back to the app.js and we import this todo context. So now we import the todo context from todo context, and then we use the use state to store the selected ID. So we type use state and then selected ID, and we set the initial state is 0, and we capitalize the S, and then under here we use the test context provider to wrap the whole app. And you can see there is a error that use state is not defined yet, so we need to import the use state, and then we use todo context.provider, and then value is equal to selected ID and also the set selected ID, and we copy this and paste at the end of the page and save it. Now we can try whether we can get the selected ID from the other components. So first we go to add to-dos, and here we can go to here and import the todo context. We can type constant select ID and also the selected ID, and then we use the use context and we use the todo context. So now we get the to-do context from this file, and this should be set the select ID, and then we can go down to here and we can try to type the selected ID and save it. We cannot get the value is because we forgot to add one more curly bracket at here. So now if we back to our website, you can see the selected ID already displayed here, and this is because the initial state is 0. So if this is 2, you will get the 2 here. So we turn back to 0, and we can go to the todo.js and also do the same thing. So we can copy the to-do context, and we copy these two and paste to the todo.js. And we have to import the use context, and then we go to display the select ID inside the button, and or we can display it after the title. So now you can also get the 0 at the title, and also get the 0 at this title. In this part, we are going to just do a very simple thing, is to change the UI depends on the selected ID. As you can remember, we already set the initial value of the selected ID is 0, and we want to set the ID of the to-do, the selected ID, when we click on this. So when the number is 0s, these buttons will use submit as the text, otherwise it will change to update. So now we back to our project and go to the add to do, and we go to the use effect and set if this is outside the input area, we set the selected ID is 0s, otherwise we do nothing. And we go down to the button, and you can see the button. So we set if the selected ID is equal to 0, then we will use the word add, otherwise this will use submit. And then we go to the todo.js, and also at here we set on click. If on click, we will set the ID which is equal to this item ID. So set selected ID as the ID, save it. Now if we go to here and click it, now you can see the ID changed to this item ID, but you can see this do not update, and we will see what happened. And if we click on the others, it will turn back to 0s. This is just because we use a one word. So we back to our add to do, and we go back to the button. So if this is 0, we set add, and if there is ID, we set update. So next time if we click on this, you can see we are preparing to update the items. Otherwise, we will going to add a new item. We are going to create the update functions. Inside the mutation.js, we create a constant called update to do. And we use the GraphQL, and then we type mutation update to do, and then we pass the ID, title, detail, and the date, and then we execute the update to do, and then we use this and paste here. And what we just missed is the ID, and we want it to return the ID, title, detail, and the date. So we can copy this and also paste to here. And now we already create this, and then we can back to add to do.js, and on the top we import the update to do, and then we use the mutations. So we constant update to do is equal to use mutation update to do, and then we go to add the modification to on submit functions, because we want to switch the function based on the selected ID. So we want to set if the selected ID is equal to 0, then we will add the new to do. So we can copy this and paste to here. Otherwise, we will use the update to do. So actually we can also copy this and paste to here, and we are going to use the update to do, but this time we have to use the ID because we need to know which to do we need to edit. And then now we can try to see whether it works. So if we click on this and now we type a new title and then new detail, and then we go to select the date and click update. Now it executes the create to do. So now we try to delete this. The problem that we cannot update the to do is because actually we do not have todo.id inside our to do object. Instead we just has the selected ID, so we should type selected ID. If we try to click on this and then we want to edit and add more words in the details and click update, you can see there is an error that the response not successful. And this is because if you look back to the mutations in the client side and also the type def in the server side, in the type def it said we need to use the ID type, but inside the mutations of the client side we use the string type. So this caused the error. So we have to change this back to ID. And now if we go to click on this again and try to type something and click update, now you can see the to do can update instantly. Now you can see if we click on one of the items and we are going to prepare to edit, we expect this value will display inside this input field. So now we want to get the values of the specific to do and put it inside the input field, so it is more convenient for us to edit. So now we go to the mutations and then add here, and we should go to the query and we duplicate this and we make some changes on, we just get to do, and we are going to add the name query get to do, and then we pass the ID, and then we use get to do and the ID and ID, and then we back to the add to do. We are going to get the get to do query, so we go to here and type constant loading error and data is equal to use query and then get to do, and then we add the add variables and we just need to pass the ID, and the ID is the selected ID. And then after we get the to do and we want to set it as the to do, so we use on completed, and then the data will go to set the to do, and the data is from the data dot get to do. So if you look at the server, you may ask why we use data get to do. We back to the type def and we can see we will get the get to do under this, so the data will under this property. So we need to use the data dot get to do in order to get the to do data. So we can try to take a look by using console.log the data, and we also have to put these up to here because we need to use the set to do after this. So now for example, if we click on this, you can see the get to do data is here, so we need to use data dot get to do in order to get this date, details, ID, and also the title. So if we type console.log data.get to do, and because you may not get the data instantly, so we have to use the question mark here and save it. And now if we click on this or this, you can see we get the values, the data, details, ID, and title, and you can also see the values displayed here. So now for example, if we want to change this to second thing and click update. Now you can see it will update immediately. And now if we click on the other and we change this and paste again, you can see we can press add to add a new thing. So the last thing we need to do is to delete these debugging things. So we back to the to do and we go to search the selected ID and we want to delete this one, and also back to the add to do and we also want to delete the console log and also the selected ID that's right after the title. And now it looks fine, but there is one more thing is inside the add to do it recommends that we should use this. So we go back to add to do and we can find line 40 and line 92 and we can type line 40 and 92. So we save it and if we refresh, the warning is gone. And the last thing that we want to solve is if you click on this and just try to type the detail and add the date without the title and click add, and you will see the error. And because the title is required, so we should check it before submit. So under the onSubmit function, we should check if the to-do.title is equal to empty string, and we should alert please enter a title. So now for example, if we add again and we should want the user to add the title, and we should also place a return, so we should not run the other coding. So we try again and click add, and now it will get a warning. So now if we try to enter a new title and click add, now it will add to the to-do list.